Stoic Sisterhood came about because I looked around and I said, well, there aren't a lot of women in this space, and there aren't a lot of Black women in this space.
I went ahead and changed all his pronouns. So I was wondering, like, philosophically, like, just would he be angry at me? Like, hey,
I don't think he would be. I don't think he would be, because he always, from what I read, always took pains to make sure that everybody was okay. And so he had a lot of empathy. Stoicism teaches me about like the dichotomy of control, the things I can't control, my choices, my thoughts, and my action.
They probably didn't love the fact that you can almost kind of like sin as much as you want and then say sorry, and then that's fine.
Yeah, because I think the Bible said, forgive your brother if he sins 70 times 7 or something like that.
Forgive your brother 70 what?
Yeah, the runway seems to be a little longer with different things.
That's really funny. Welcome to the Feminine Stoic. This upcoming book features 365 women who naturally embody the essence of Stoicism without having necessarily heard of it. The idea was inspired by The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. I had CPTSD, and my friend John told me to check it out. I was like, no, thank you. I thought it was something just for strong, silent men, and I honestly love being girly. He said it has nothing to do with gender, and he sent me a copy of the book. Well, a free PDF version anyways. I forgot about it for a year, then I reached such a low point that I figured, why not? Of course, I ended up loving it, and it actually did change my life. I'm still not the best at being stoic, but it's helped a lot. That being said, I easily saw that all 365 days of the Daily Stoic feature men. And while that's great, I wanted to bring this book to women and girls too, since Stoicism is for everyone. Shan is a senior billing and operations professional and a writer and speaker on resilience and faith. She operates the Stoic Sisterhood Substack newsletter. She is a voracious reader of history, philosophy, and Christianity, and she also loves a good mystery novel and British mystery on Acorn TV and BritBox. Welcome, Janet. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we begin, I want to jump into some of the Stoic quotes that I had sent earlier and kind of get your thoughts, and also any stories you have that relate to it, or people you know that relate to it.
Okay.
If then, it's not that the things that you pursue or avoid are coming at you, but rather that you, in a sense, are seeking them out, at least try to keep your judgment of them steady. And they too will remain calm, and you won't be seen chasing after or fleeing from them. By Marcus Aurelius.
So my thoughts on that, I grew up hearing my mom say all the time, the things you think about, they can become reality. So if you keep telling yourself something bad may happen. So that's kind of what I take from that. If you keep repeating to yourself something that's negative, it's going to manifest itself. That's one way I look at that quote from Marcus Aurelius, who is probably, he's not a stoic, but I read his meditations every day. I read a chapter every day, and it's on a loop for me.
Nice. The way I read this quote too is kind of in Stoicism, there's a balance of trying for things and then letting things be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not completely like just do nothing and be a monk and just kind of sit there on a rock. But the way I read this is keeping in mind things that are coming to you, things that you're trying for, and then keep a steady judgment of them. So try for things, but don't try too hard. Like don't try to control and manage everything exactly, but you can kind of try a little bit and keep your bearings.
Right. That's almost like becoming a little bit too obsessive in what you're doing. I think you can see that from different ways, but yeah, I certainly see that as well.
Yeah, don't become too obsessive. I think for a lot of the thing, you know, in terms of ambition and trying to get things done, yeah, there's definitely a balance on when to let go, when to relax, when to do something else. Yeah.
Right.
And then for the second one from Epictetus, I was also wondering if you had a story that came to your mind from your own experience in life?
With Aurelius?
Yeah, for the second one, Epictetus. If you are defeated once and tell yourself you will overcome, but carry on as before, know in the end you'll be so ill and weakened that eventually you won't even notice your mistake and will begin to rationalize your behavior.
Okay, so what I take from that is we all fail. That's part of life, but it's what lesson you take from that. And so if you keep doing the thing that defeats you all the time, then you haven't learned. And you are just repeating, whether it's a bad habit or a bad pattern, or you just haven't learned from that thing that defeated you, knocked you off your game, or if you were in a tough season, there are usually lessons you learn from those seasons. So if you haven't learned anything and you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, then you've, in a sense, defeated yourself and you've made yourself sick from it. You weakened yourself mentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you formed a bad habit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
My background is engineering. So, in terms of creating things and science, biomedical, but if you're doing an experiment or building something and it doesn't work, I think engineers are a bit resilient because we don't think of it as like failure, which sounds so harsh, but just not working. Yeah, we may try again to see if it was just, a random variable. But yeah, eventually we have to kind of like figure out the variables, see what's not working and try to fix or adjust each one.
Right. Yeah, for me, I work in operations. And so there are times when, for example, we have a CRM system that's an external company. And so we don't have any control over when they do updates. And so towards the end of the year, it's a media company. And so if there's a change, I remember the company changed the interface. So it was so much easier for me to create a new schedule. And after this change, it was harder for me to do it. And so, I figured it out really quickly because I'm, tech savvy, but I still didn't learn it as well as I did that first iteration of the program. And so I kind of felt that I was defeated a couple times going in, scrambling because then I don't want to miss a deadline because it affects financials. So it was like a like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Okay.
So I kind of felt a little bit like what Epictetus said in this particular quote. But again, practice makes perfect. So I just did what I knew how to do and just stayed on top of whenever there were updates. Sometimes we didn't pay attention to them, but now every time I see something pop up that there's going to be an update, I make sure I go and look at what that update is so it won't take me by surprise.
Okay. So with each one, you kind of learn to learn it sooner rather than later. So I guess, inefficiency wouldn't build up.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first couple of times, it kind of felt like what Epictetus was saying, that, I was so weakened by this because it drove me crazy and it delayed what I had to do. And so, I came back and said, no, I can't do this because I have a magazine that has $250,000 worth of advertisements. I can't fool around. Those invoices need to get out in a timely manner. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes I feel like we think things will be harder than they are, so we avoid learning them. But that's very stoic of you. You felt your responsibility. Like this is not just you needing to learn something, but it affects like a larger organization.
Right.
So you're like, okay, I'm just gonna learn it. Just do it. I saw your Substack Stoic Sisterhood and thought it was lovely. Yeah, I guess before getting into this, I love that you're also trying to bring Stoicism to more women. So I guess tell me actually about the Stoic Sisterhood, like why that concept, why that name? Yeah, why did you create it?
A couple years ago, I still subscribe to Audible because I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I'm driving to and from work. And I ended up with 5 credits and I didn't want to waste them. And so I was looking around for a bunch of audiobooks to fill, that gap. And I came across Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. So that was my entry point into Stoicism. And so then I read all his books. And then I got meditations and discourses by Seneca and Epictetus, which is a harder read, except for the Enchiridion. But yeah, so that was my entry point into Stoicism. And so the more I read what, they were talking about, it changed my mindset a lot. I'm a person of faith, but they do complement each other in a lot of ways, right? Stoicism will teach me how to have control or how to think something through and not be impulsive, while faith grounds me in a different way. I can pray and, read my Bible and, get peace that way as well. So the whole thing of Stoic Sisterhood came about because I looked around and I said, well, there aren't a lot of women in this space, and there aren't a lot of Black women in this space. And, we are generally leaning more towards faith, but this is a nice balance for me. And I thought that's a nice thing to introduce to women.
Definitely. And I mentioned this in my email too, but it was actually hard for me to read meditations. So that's why I created this. Yeah, meditations for women.
Right.
Yeah, all the pronouns are changed to she, her.
Right.
Yeah. And I know it may seem like a small thing, like in terms of just, pronoun switch, but it makes a huge difference to read, a woman must be grounded in strength instead of reading like constantly, like a man must be grounded in strength and then doing the mental switch every time.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's needed because again, while we may view it as, gender neutral, it's really hard to see it saying he and him and all the male names and very few female names involved in this whole Stoic movement. So yeah, that's a good resource.
Yeah, thank you. And I was kind of conflicted because Marcus Aurelius, he was a Stoic 2000 years ago. And this was not his diary, it was his journal. So he only wrote about Stoicism, not, specific hardships or grievances, but just the philosophy in general. But yeah, it's his personal journal. And I went ahead and changed all his pronouns. So I was wondering, like, philosophically, like, just would he be angry at me? Like,
I don't think he would be. I don't think he would be because he always, from what I read, always took pains to make sure that everybody was okay. And so he had a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding of different people and their situation. So I think he would be fine with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think he was ahead of his time in terms of how he viewed, just life in general. So I'm pretty sure he would be fine with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so too. I think so too. He also didn't approve that his journal would be published for other people to read in his generation or even past his generation for millennia. So I think he would have been fine with that too. So that kind of, that's my reasoning.
Right.
And in terms of meditations and Enchiridion, you're right about that. I think Enchiridion is a good place to start for people as well. Very like bite-sized.
Right. Yeah, because it's a quick read. It's the other part of that book that's a little challenging because the language is dated. So Robin Waterfield has an annotated version, which is a lot better. I just started reading that, his version. It's big, but it gives a good context like he does in meditations. He has a version too for meditation.
Yes. Okay, that's amazing. I'm actually working on the Feminine Stoic Edition of Enchiridion and Discourses too. And working on from George Long, which is, I think, even more antiquated in terms of the vocabulary and language.
You can be lost in that stuff really easy.
Yeah.
So, and that's a good thing, right? Because we are adapting it so more people can understand it. I'm pretty sure more people would embrace it, but some parts of it is really hard to understand.
Yeah. And I saw that actually with my Stoic group. I run a Stoic group here in Dallas, and it's for men and women. Although I recently started one version for women only. But yeah, I provided some of the quotes in the she, her language and the original he, him. Some of the men were complaining that, wow, this is actually really hard to read it in the feminine form. Like it just seems kind of surreal, or yeah, they kind of understood now how difficult it is to see the other side.
Right.
But yeah, no, they're a very supportive group, and I think they really believe in the cause too, even the men. So I'm glad to have support there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, we women need to stick together because this is kind of a new frontier for us too. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that's good
Definitely.
work that you're doing.
And it's like I created a women's only one too, because, I went to create a safe space. We haven't had our first women's only one yet, but I think sometimes women feel a bit, I guess, intimidated. Like everyone feels intimidated sometimes, I think.
Right.
But yeah, when I think it's a bunch of men too who are very, I guess, more knowledgeable with Stoicism, they can feel a bit like out of, yeah, like not ready enough to talk about Stoicism.
Hmm, hmm,
But,
hmm.
but yeah, it's philosophy. So it's, you know, beginners can get into it too.
Right, right. We have to tell it so more beginners come in,
Yeah.
so it's not just male dominated anymore. There's room at the table for everybody. So whether
Mhm.
you're agnostic, an atheist, or a Christian or whatever, there's room for everybody.
Yeah. And if you just concentrate on the actual text, like sentences like one by one, it doesn't seem as scary. Like, wow, this is philosophy and stoicism, which, can sound a bit scary, I think, for people who haven't just read a sentence.
Mhm, mhm. And I think some people think that like Stoics don't show emotion, and that's really not true. You can have emotion. The thing is, you need to have control of those emotions.
Yeah. I think it's the start of book two in Meditations, but Marcus Aurelius, I think says when you wake up every morning in the daytime, you remind yourself that people will be, what is it? Envious, ungrateful, angry, bitter.
Right.
But yeah, at
Emma.
least acknowledges that. And he said, yeah, just expect that that's how people will be even 2000 years ago. So
Right.
don't, work yourself up over it, and yeah, kind of just deal with it. Yeah. Figure out why they are that way and be stoic about it. Just don't be.
Right. Another quote that I like of his too is like, don't feel harmed and you won't be harmed. Sometimes we can let our impression of what somebody thinks, what we think they think, or, if they're not in a good mood, we think it has to do with us. Or, maybe they said something we wouldn't have said that way. And then, you're offended and you're choosing to be offended though.
Yeah.
So that's another quote of his that I really like a lot.
Hmm.
I try to use that in my daily activities, in the workplace because, it can go sideways because of different personalities and, different demands. If we're on a deadline, people are a little short.
Yeah, definitely. That really helps. And I think it helps with relationships,
Mm.
not just, romantic, but like friendships, colleague, all relationships in life. And I actually wanted to get your thoughts about this too, because I think stoicism for women is a little bit different because we have to deal with more more bias, and we do have to stand up for ourselves in some ways, just in terms of discrimination and bias. But there's a way to do it that is with reason and virtue and with stoicism rather than just, flipping out and going crazy, so to speak. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that in terms of balancing kind of like social justice with stoicism?
Again, it brings me back to that, don't think you're harmed and you're not harmed. And that's
Mhm.
kind of easier said than done because there are biases in the workplace, and not just the workplace, in life in general. And women are dealing, for me, we're at different seasons in our lives, more so than men. Yeah, they're in different seasons, but I went from being a mother that my children needed to being a mother that of adult children that the needs are different. And then on top of that, I have elderly parents that I have to kind of be a caregiver for, and then still juggle work and, my side stuff, the Stoic Sisterhood, and so on and so forth. So for me, the season that I'm in, I need stoicism. I need stoicism and I need faith. And both have grounded me in so many good ways, and then I'm menopausal too. So that brings its own issues as well, the mental stuff, the ups and
Was
downs.
that the
Huh?
last thing you said? What was that?
Menopause. So
Oh,
that's also something that we don't talk about a lot either.
yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I love it. Yeah. It's good to address these topics to make it safe for, all women.
I'm bringing different things to this way of thinking, it's not a religion, but, this way of thinking and this lifestyle and, this philosophy. And yeah, so my needs may be different from yours and from somebody else, but it doesn't mean we all can't, meet on this common ground.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Stoicism too, it is separating kind of ego versus, what you actually need to stand up for. Yeah, because I think being a woman of color too is different. Every identity has their, unique hardships and their unique, I guess, benefits too, but, like unique perspective. But I feel like with Stoicism, it helps me kind of realize like, I don't want to get angry because I feel insulted.
Right.
But if it is part of standing up for something larger than myself, then I feel like I have to do it, It's like a responsibility instead of just, it helps me decide what to let slide. Like, okay, that was annoying, but okay. Versus, what I actually have to stand up for.
Yeah, there's a VP on my job and he's very high maintenance, and he got to me like 3 days in a row. And the first day, it took me a little bit by surprise and I was really busy and I got bent out of shape over it. But then the second day, I said, no, I'm not going to let this, ruin my day. And so again, it comes back to choose not to be harmed. And so I spoke up for myself and I let it go at that point. And so the third day when he did it, it just like, whatever. And I did what I needed to do. I didn't do anything wrong. I explained myself, but I didn't let it eat at me like it did on the first day.
And actually, that's part of, wisdom and justice too. That's a balance of it. Like the justice part was at least saying something because, we're still human. Like we're not robots where we just don't get bothered or, we can just let things happen. But yeah, you said it once. And then the wisdom is, not letting it bother you.
And, you do speak up because you're supposed to speak up and not become a punching bag or just let them run over you. But I think the point is not to let it fester and eat at you. And then your response becomes defensive. And then it takes an ugly turn from there. And so Stoicism, justice helps to, and wisdom help to temper what you are going to do and what you're going to say.
Yeah.
And what not to say.
I like how you mentioned festering because the Stoics, they actually do address their emotions in real time. Like, they try to address their emotions as soon as possible and figure out why things happen, why they feel a certain way. This led to this, and went wrong. And I like to think about it as, when you're driving a car and sometimes you have these emergency lights come on or fix it lights like gas tank and oil change. So I feel like with Stoicism, it's listening to those lights instead of just, kill switching it and turning it off or just like, okay, I'm not going to look at all these problems. But looking at those emotional lights and trying to fix them as soon as possible.
Right. I wrote something about the amber light rule. And, when you get to an amber light, some people try to beat the light and speed right through it, but you're really
yellow
supposed
light.
to, the yellow light. So you're really supposed to pause. And, one day I was driving and it hit me like, this is like stoicism right in front of me. You're supposed to pause before reacting. And instead of just reacting, because when you react, it's usually not the right thing that you're doing. And so sometimes that pause makes a big difference in what you would have said.
Mm, I like that. Okay, like thinking of the yellow light. Okay, instead of just stopping, like just pause for a bit too.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you're really supposed to slow down. But, of course, some people try to beat the light. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, I love that. And then you wrote in one of your articles about the principles of assent and
hmm
what impressions are.
hmm
Yeah, I would love to hear about that for everyone.
Yeah. So again, it comes back to like that first impression, that first thought. Sometimes it's not the right thing. And I based it on a story with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She passed away when I was about 11. And I felt that it was partly my fault, but it really wasn't. But, the 11-year-old me had never seen someone deceased before. And what I took from that wasn't that, okay, her time had come. What I took from that was everybody I come in contact with who's sick, I feel that they're going to pass away. And so I don't want to be around them. And that was basically that first thought just changed that whole mindset.
Yeah, especially as a kid, that must be difficult to have that type of belief. But yeah, sometimes we do associate like cause and effect, but incorrectly. Yeah.
Incorrectly, absolutely. That was incorrect. But the
Yeah.
11-year-old me didn't know that. But I grew up with that
Yeah.
thinking. And a couple of years ago, my aunt passed away, and I wouldn't go and see her because I didn't want to be in a situation where I was confronting that again. And
Mhm.
so coming into Stoicism and, just life in general, evolving, maturing, I've started seeing that differently, that, that
Mhm.
first thought, I can't blame myself, or I can't think that, oh my God, they're going to die. That shouldn't be the first thought if they're sick,
Mhm.
because it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that. And so that's where the whole principle of assent came in for me with that article.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of, how superstitions develop and
hmm
how sometimes even just impressions that are attributed to a wrong cause, even minorly, are kind of like mini superstitions that people have in their brains sometimes, but without validating it and asking like, is this true in like every single situation? Was this coincidence? Was it due to actually, you know, this specific disease rather than all in any diseases, I can kind of lead to incorrect impressions, leading to false beliefs. So yeah, you do need to really assent to the right impressions. If that makes
Right.
yeah.
And yeah, and then, those beliefs turn into unexamined reactions, and they just continue from there.
Mhm.
So as you said, with superstitions, it kind of feels like that, right? That this is something that you're gonna always believe. This is the way
Mhm.
it's gonna be, when it's probably not accurate.
Mhm.
Not accurate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was gonna say another example is like if a door closes, you assume that the opportunity is gone. No, maybe that wasn't the right door, or maybe that wasn't the right time, right? Delay doesn't mean denial. So, that first thought, like, oh my God, I missed it, it's never gonna come back. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily correct.
Mhm. I actually read, I don't know where I read this somewhere, but you know that euphemism, yeah, when a door closes, like a window opens or go through a different door. Someone said, if the door closes, just turn the handle. It's a door, it's meant to be open.
Right.
I mean, of course, sometimes it's locked, but yeah, you always want to challenge assumptions and look.
hmm
That's great. And yeah, with superstitions, I'm thinking culturally, like even to my own heritage, there's, all these superstitions which are, passed down through generations for like a whole group of people. But yeah, we all have our like mini superstitions too that are individual to us that
hmm
may want to challenge.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really eye-opening journey, and I've learned a lot about myself
Mhm.
through Stoicism. So yeah, I'm grateful that I had those 5 credits on Audible.
sometimes those small things make a big difference. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
how fate or luck or just how things work out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm kind of curious. I don't know if you saw, but I recently had Brittany Polak come on,
Mm-hmm.
and she wrote a book, Jesus and Stoicism.
I've seen it on Substack, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I guess you're our second guest who is, yeah, very into Christianity. Yeah, I'm curious how Stoicism and Christianity differ for you, or how they complement each other and how they kind of work for you.
So, as I said, I'm a deep person. I have deep faith, and I feel that the my faith teaches me to surrender, things to God that I can't control, and it gives me hope. But Stoicism teaches me about like the dichotomy of control, the things I can't control, my choices, my thoughts, and my actions. So one gives me that framework to be mindful of the thoughts, the actions, and the choices, while faith gives me a basis to know that I can't do things in my own flesh, so to speak, and to surrender to God and to pray and to be mindful that, I'm part of a bigger story.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there
Yes.
too. Yeah, meditations. Yeah, Marcus talks about, the whole and how everything is connected in the world and also past, present, and future. Like
Mm-hmm,
things transform and yeah, like one thing is not never just exists by itself.
right. And Stoicism is all about emotional discipline, and faith tells me why that discipline matters. And, what my ultimate hope is in, and it's not in me, it's in, a higher power over, and not just me, right? So I
Yeah.
can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so, the discipline is from Stoicism, and the surrender and the faith is from Christianity.
hmm
And
Okay.
I had written something about, how they are very similar with some of the quotes from
hmm
Aurelius and from, other Stoics, and some things that Jesus said.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities. And they were somewhat contemporaries too. Zeno, started Stoicism before Christianity
Right.
began. And yeah, Marcus Aurelius was around like 121 AD. And yeah, so he was, born after Christ.
Yeah, and in the New Testament there is a reference to the Stoics. I came across that one day and I said, "Wow, this is interesting." I think it was Paul who said that, he met the Stoics, and he never specified which one. But yeah, so it's certainly in the Bible, in
That's
the
in
New
the Bible,
Testament.
the word Stoic?
Yeah, it's in the
Oh
New
wow,
Testament.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think it was Paul who was going around because he was, he traveled around. And yeah, it's in the New Testament. And I
Okay.
came across that one day when I was reading, and I said, wow, this is interesting that the word
Yeah.
Stoics is in the Bible.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm curious. I want to look more into it. And then, yeah, with the Stoics, they believed in a higher power. Yeah, a couple of things. One, it was, the larger universe and how everything interplayed in the world. And then another is, Zeus and the Greek gods. Yeah, they mentioned that several times, thinking Zeus and kind of giving up some control to him too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. For example, premeditatio malorum, there is a comparison with Christianity, where in Luke 14 it says, count the cost. Okay, so premeditatio malorum meets count the cost. And so the way I wrote about it was that the Stoics practice negative visualization, worst case scenarios. Then Jesus taught the same thing, where he said, before you build a tower, count the cost, basically, was what he was saying. So there is a cost for everything. And so that's kind of where they're similar with some things in the Bible and
Yeah.
Stoicism.
Yeah, I love that. It makes it feel like, everything is, interconnected. Yeah, now and in the past. So, That's very cool.
Yeah, which I never understood why some people kind of run to their corners like these two things can't coexist. They really can because there's some overlap. But one doesn't replace the other. It's just, two different entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they can't coexist. They can actually do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's some complexity there. Yeah. And I love that you hold space for both,
Right.
It's like, Christianity and science, Christianity and Stoicism. I think some of the contemporaries of the Stoics, maybe not the Stoics themselves, maybe some of them, but around 2000 years ago, I think they were a little bit upset at Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to look more into it, but I wonder if you know if it's because they didn't like the concept of kind of absolving your sins and going to heaven. Because I think this, well, not heaven specifically, but just the absolving all your sins, because the Stoics emphasize doing the right thing in every
Mm-hmm.
situation. And if you make a mistake, then, say sorry and just, don't do it again. But I feel like they probably didn't love the fact that in Christianity, you can almost kind of like sin as much as you want and then say sorry, and then that's fine.
Yeah, because I think the Bible said, forgive your brother if he sins 70 times 7 or something like that.
Forgive your
So
brother 70, what?
if he sins 70 times 7, again, I may not be quoting that accurately, but it's something like that. So yeah, the runway seems to be a little longer with different things.
That's really funny.
I kind of would like to read more about, what the real thinking is behind both in terms of how the Stoics were in one corner and the Christians were in one corner.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, sometimes one person or group or part of history doesn't represent the entire what everyone thinks.
Right. Yeah, but like I said, it's in the Bible. Paul knew about them, so I don't know what he knew. I never read anything else that expanded on that. But I would love to read something about that if it exists. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. I haven't read Brittany's book, but yeah, I wonder if there's some of that in there too. And
So
I
there
mean,
has to be a backstory to that because he brought it up. So
yeah. Mhm. And I think the Stoics mention Christianity or the Christians too. Yeah, in some of their works. And I'm curious, do you have a favorite Stoic? And if so, who is it?
well, I like Seneca a lot. I like, believe it or not, Zeno, because his story is where he truly his life changed like in a split second, where he was in a shipwreck and lost everything and then went into a bookstore and then found his path, his destiny. And so he's a real example in triumphing over adversity. And so a lot of his work didn't survive. There are quotes here and there, fragments here and there, but the core part of his story is so empowering that you don't just throw your hands up and give up, right? You just go on. And then he found Stoicism because he wandered into a bookstore.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he founded Stoicism. Yeah, not just found Stoicism. Yeah, he founded it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, originally he's from Cyprus, or what is now Cyprus,
Mm-hmm.
Citium.
He lost everything in that shipwreck.
And ended up in Athens.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And he's not brought up as much because, yeah, you're right. There's not as much of his work that survives, unlike the three main Stoics, where we have like a lot of their works.
Right. And Musonius Rufus is another one who's another one that I like a lot. And I think he was ahead of his time in terms of women, because he felt that women could do more than they were giving them credit for.
Mm,
And
I
so
love that.
again, yeah, a lot of his stuff didn't survive, but the little bit that's out there kind of alludes to that he was more open to women participating in a lot of different things than perhaps some of the other Stoics were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when we hear about women in Stoicism from the contemporaries of Marcus Aurelius and so forth, a lot of times they're not, great stories. There's not that much to say about them, except that I think some of them killed themselves, which is, yeah, I mean, they're not the best examples. My book that I'm focusing on, my original book, is about women who embody Stoicism, even if they've never heard of it or, weren't
Right.
contemporaries of it. Because there's so many women who genuinely embody the qualities of Stoicism just naturally.
And yeah, they didn't know that it was Stoicism. Like,
Yeah.
for example, I just wrote a piece about Harriet Tubman, and she stared down. She was at one time the most wanted person in America, and still for all, she risked her life to, do the Underground Railroad to help bring people to freedom. So that's courage in action.
Yeah.
She believed in what she was doing, and she didn't let people who, were trying to capture her deter her from what she thought was right.
Yeah, and it was right. And yeah, that is a prime example of just continuous bravery, not just one time she saved someone,
Right.
but she, yeah,
Made a
made it to
number of trips.
freedom. Yeah, help people, and then went back
Yeah.
into the danger, like directly into the danger, and yeah, did it again and again. So
Yeah, so and so this is a way that women, I think, can gain traction in Stoicism is by telling the stories of women who have triumphed using Stoic principles. They just didn't know that it was Stoic principles. Another one that comes to mind is Madam C.J. Walker. Instead of waiting for the system to hand her something, she said, I got up and I hired myself. And so she was the first one of the first self-made millionaires, and probably in today's money, she probably would have been a multimillionaire. So, yeah. So again, she didn't call it Stoicism. She just called it living, right? She called it life. But it's really Stoicism in action.
okay, and I'm not too familiar with her. Can you tell us about who she is and what she did?
She was a seamstress at one point. This was going back during the height of racism in this country, and she was a domestic worker, but she developed hair products because she was losing her hair, which is a story a lot of women, deal with. And so she just wasn't satisfied with her situation, and nobody would give her a job, I guess. But she created her own business. And back then, she hired sales reps. She had a whole army of women who she empowered, who she gave opportunities to, who were gainfully employed because of her. So she was an entrepreneur. But, again, this was her practicing Stoicism, not waiting on, things to change for you, for people to hand you things. She did what was in her control, and within her control was going out and starting her own business with something that she knew about because she had problems with her hair. So she created the products, and there was a need in the community because at the time, Black women couldn't go into a regular salon. So, we couldn't go to hospitals, we couldn't go to schools, it wasn't integrated at that time. So, she created an opportunity for herself. And by doing that, she created opportunities for other women as well.
I love that. Yeah, for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for bringing that up because I think some people sometimes think Stoicism is kind of only going with the flow and, letting things happen to you. But it's also about taking initiative. And yeah, as long as, the cause is, righteous and helps others, then you have to do it. Like it's your responsibility almost. And she felt that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And there are a number of quotes out there, but one thing that she said, hey, I gave myself a chance. She got up and she acted. She didn't wait for someone to give her that opportunity.
To give her permission when
Right.
the system was not fair. Yeah. And we need
So
more women doing that. We need more people doing that.
right. And we need more women to tell the stories of those women, whether they're Black, white, Asian American, or could be worldwide. I've written about people in Africa, women in Africa who've made a difference. So there's so much out there that hasn't been told.
Yes. Actually, after this, I probably want to get your thoughts because, as I write my book with my co-authors, the Feminine Stoic, we're bringing 250 women and their stories who embody Stoicism. And I really want to bring women from different backgrounds and
Right.
ethnicities and cultures. So yeah, we have a good list. But yeah, I would love your thoughts if you think of anyone else or,
Yeah, sure. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Madam C.J. Walker and Harriet Tubman are two really good ones. And, there's also Katherine Johnson from Hidden
NASA.
Figures.
Yes, NASA.
Yeah. That's a good story to tell because she was working through during an unbelievable time and she still persevered and didn't see herself as making history. She was just saw herself as doing her job.
And the women they didn't get credit for
Mm-mm.
NASA space launch. And yeah, Hidden Figures, that was based on real people, real women.
Real people. Yeah, and that's story that was never told until that movie came out.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is powerful to tell stories, yeah, through all of these media. I know there's so much media right now in terms of social media, and there's just so much content out there. But to really kind of focus and take in, the important things is crucial for our sanity
Yeah.
and learning.
Yes. So we have to keep telling those stories.
Yes, I love that. Okay. Yeah, I think we got through all the questions I had sent you. Are there the topics in Stoicism or anything else you want to discuss or share?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad because I wanted to kind of diversify it's a small podcast, but I wanted to diversify the show and have different types of women come on. So I was really happy to meet you.
Oh, same here. Thank you for having me.
I'm still learning how to live more stoically every day. If you are too, then you found the right place. Stay tuned with The Feminine Stoic. And if this resonated with you, maybe share it with someone who needs it too. Thank you.